Hi everyone, my name's Katie Crane. I'm the Pilates professional. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Pilates Lounge podcast. Now, in this episode, we are talking about the most fascinating, inspiring, and life-changing experience a woman will ever go through in her life, in my belief. In the 9 months that it takes a woman to grow a human being or multiple human beings inside of her own body, so many things happen. Being pregnant can be for some an emotional and physical roller coaster. There's no doubt about it that pregnancy strips us away to our bare, raw bones. What pregnancy is doing, I believe, is actually preparing us for motherhood. And as a mother, in hindsight, the pregnancy was nothing. Being a mother builds resilience. It really takes us to the limit and is a never-ending cycle of learning. As our baby is growing and as our teenager is developing, as we send our adult children off into the world, every time something happens as a mother for the first time, it's a huge accomplishment. And now in hindsight, I realize that being pregnant was one of the biggest changes in my life that ever happened to me, for my husband, and for our entire family. Having a baby is not for everybody, and that's okay. In fact, my own sister chose not to have a child, and that's cool. For me, personally, I can't say that we actually had decided to have a child. My body was ready to get pregnant, obviously, and it happened whether we were ready or not. And it was the biggest blessing that ever happened in my life. And I know that even that is not true for everybody. Pregnancy and motherhood can be both a blessing and very traumatic for some people. But in today's episode, I want to talk about what happens to the female's brain, to her body, and how we can work with women throughout pregnancy in a Pilates environment so that women can really feel empowered about the changes that are happening in her body. And not only so that we can prepare women for that single one day when they give birth, which, believe me, as a pregnant woman, many of us think that the entire pregnancy is all based on that one day of birthing our baby. Now that I have had a baby, and now that I've worked with thousands of women with their pregnancies, with multiple pregnancies, I have come to realize that our job as a Pilates professional is not necessarily preparing the woman for the birthing process, but is actually empowering mothers to learn to love their body like they've never loved themselves before, which can be a very, very hard task when things are changing pretty rapidly throughout pregnancy in that 9 months. But also, we are preparing women for their post-pregnancy body. Because once you have been pregnant, once you've given birth, however that child comes into the world, your body will never be the same again. And honestly, I felt like when I was pregnant and once I'd had my child, and even as we go along in life with your child, you hear about all these things that happen after the fact. It's like there's this secret women's business that nobody talks about until you're in the secret women's club. And then Everybody puts up their hand. Oh, yeah, that happened to me too. Oh, yeah, I felt that too. Oh, my gosh, isn't it exhausting? Oh, yes, if only somebody had told us. So, while this is not a scare tactic, this is not an episode about contraception, because I don't want the episode to prevent you from spending time with your loved one. I do want to be pretty frank about what happens to the body and the changes that are upon you when you're pregnant, so that as Pilates professionals, we can actually work with these women without fear at all. Pregnancy is an amazing time, and I want you to think of this just for a millisecond, just for a moment. A female is growing another human being, or even multiple human beings, inside of her own body while she goes about her day-to-day life for 9 whole months, for around about 40 weeks. If that doesn't blow your mind, just actually considering that she's growing a human inside her, it just blows my mind when I really consider what is happening. Now, the conception of that human being, from cellular to embryo to a squeaky little baby at the very end, is a pretty amazing task. Women are pretty fucking amazing. No other person apart from a woman can actually grow a human in their body as nature intended. Isn't that just brilliant? I mean, I was talking to my one of my instructors as a teenager, and last night she came into the class and she was working, and she's holding her tummy and like, oh my gosh, I hate the luteal phase. Why is this happening? And all I could think of, this is preparing you for motherhood. When we're going through our teenage years and we're suffering from the period pains, from the pimples, from the outbursts, from all the emotions, everything is preparing us to continue to reproduce. That is a big part of why we are here on earth. And I know that not everybody is going to consider having a baby. Not everybody is prepared to have a baby. Not everybody is even able to have a baby. But for those of you who do go through that process, or for those of you who work with women who go through that process, just know that it is because of those women that we are all here right now. If your mother didn't give birth, you would not be here. It's as simple as that. And I really encourage us all to sit on that for a little bit, because whether or not you've recognized it, the way that the world is going, it will end up like, what's that movie? Oh my gosh, I can't think of it right now. But, it will end up like test tube babies being grown in chemist warehouses. Like, science is trying to take away growing humans from us humans, and they're trying to take it into a science lab. It's potentially already happened. And as much as AI is great and technology is wonderful, if that doesn't scare the pants off you, then maybe you're not looking at the world of what is actually happening right now. But I feel like the best thing that we can do is be rooted in what we are meant to be doing as a species. What is it that we are here for? And how can we help the next generation and the next generation and the next generation be better, live healthier, be more connected to Mother Nature and to Mother Earth, be more resilient, be more aware of the universal surroundings. this all comes back to being pregnant. This all comes back to us getting our feet in the dirt, into touching Mother Earth, into grounding, into being part of community. Because as we lose community, and we are losing community, there's no doubt about it. I mean, how many people now are coming to you because you are community? People are desperate for community right now because society at large is losing its sense of structure of community, and it is being handed over to technology. But there is actually a movement, an undercurrent of people seeking traditional values of men and women building families that are going to be remembered for generations for just that. As a woman, bringing a human being into this world is, in fact, ensuring that this world even continues. And I know, I always think of things from a different perspective, right? That's partly why you listen to this podcast. But this is the way that I see it. This is the reality. With all that being said, what I do want us to consider as Pilates professionals is that when we work with women, and when we work with women who are considering pregnancy, who are pregnant, who have been pregnant, we are working with the future of humanity. And what an honor it is to be doing something so beautiful and so deep and so profound. Now, when we work with women specifically throughout pregnancy, I'm going to, in this episode, kind of break it down into the 3 trimesters. And after I've broken this down in the 3 trimesters, as far as what's happening to her body, then I might come back and touch on what's happening to the brain. Because this is one of the very fascinating things about pregnancy. And what happens to the brain, there's 3 major changes that happen in the brain as we develop as human beings. And pregnancy is actually one of them. But let's really get into the show and talk about the first trimester. So what is the first trimester? So pregnancy is broken down into 3 trimesters. Let's say it's approximately 40 weeks. So from conception to complete gestation is about 40 weeks. So the first trimester is going to be the first 12 weeks. Now let's have a look at the body and hormonal changes. Somebody once said to me, after I was pregnant, and then I was like, oh yeah, I felt exactly that happening, exactly that. Somebody once said to me that in the first 12 weeks, when a woman is actually developing cells, so the baby, it starts off as cells, and then those cells become an embryo, and then that embryo grows into us, into a little human being. But at the cellular structure, when the body is producing those cells, the energy that it takes for the human body to be able to produce those cells out of the male sperm and the female egg is the equivalent to the woman walking up a slight incline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for approximately 12 weeks. So although we cannot see anything happening, the changes in the body in those first 12 weeks are quite profound. And the reality of it is a lot of women won't even know that they're pregnant in those first 12 weeks, and that's okay. And I forget what the statistics are, but statistically, many women are going to actually evacuate that pregnancy within the first 12 weeks because Mother Nature didn't intend for it to happen, or her body wasn't prepared for it to happen. So Mother Nature will eliminate the pregnancy, if the body could not sustain the pregnancy or if the body perceives to be in some sort of danger. So, when we work with women who are desperately trying to get pregnant, and this is a story that is super common, maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't, but a woman is trying to get pregnant and it never happens. They've tried IVF, they've tried everything, they've had all the sperm count done, everything looks okay, can't get pregnant. The couple go on holiday, woman gets pregnant. Stress is a huge indicator of whether or not that egg is going to even hold in the female body. And stress can come from environmental factors or internal factors as well. So if your body is toxic, if you don't have enough nourishment in the body, if it's not a super healthy environment for that egg to plant, then ain't no having no baby. This is important for us to understand. Many people are super stressed, and our rate of pregnancies is in the world is going down, which is a little bit sad. There's also a statistic that I saw that was like, since 2022, the rate of miscarriages and the rate of stillbirths has also increased. I forget what the statistic was, but it was something like by 3%, which is quite alarming if you think about it. I've got a couple of ideas of why since 2022 this may have been happening, but that could be something for another episode. But it's happening in any case. We know that there's a lot of environmental toxins. Studies have shown that if you were to get tested for things like glyphosate, which is what agriculture industry uses to spray on fields, on crops, then over 90% of us are going to have glyphosate in our body. And glyphosate actually holds on in the body. It's very difficult to get rid of glyphosate. Also, same with heavy metals. Heavy metal toxins are huge as well. Heavy metals are in our environment, in some of our foods, and it's also very difficult for us to get rid of these. So environmental factors are going to prevent a woman from getting pregnant, but lifestyle factors as well. But in that first 12 weeks, a heck of a lot is happening. So it's normal for us to see our clients very tired and fatigued. She may not know that she's pregnant yet, but she may feel that she's not quite herself. If you know that a woman is pregnant in the first 12 weeks and she's feeling tired, encourage her to come to one of your classes that is not so high intensity. Movement is absolutely key. There's no doubt about it. But I remember in that first 12 weeks, I didn't get really bad morning sickness, but I certainly felt like I had a hangover for about 12 weeks. And it was a hangover without the fun, let me tell you that. It's pretty common. Some women get even worse than a hangover, like they're literally throwing up. Some women throw up throughout their entire pregnancy, and that must be absolutely horrible. But the majority of women are going to be pretty okay after the 12 weeks. But if you're not feeling optimal, then it's important that we're not pushing our body. So what's happening is the energy that we are usually accessing just to go about our daily lives is being used to produce a human. And that's just wild. Now, so morning sickness, fatigue, breast tenderness is a big one. So breast tenderness is from rising hormone levels. So in that first 12 weeks, hormones that are rising are estrogen and progesterone. Now let's touch on them for a little bit. So yes, breast tenderness is part of that. So while you could be laying on your belly, you could be doing prone exercises in that first 12 weeks, no problem at all. It may not be comfortable if you've got sore boobs. So it's okay to modify exercises so that then you're not doing things to lay on the boobs that may be sore. It's definitely safe to be doing prone exercises apart from that. In fact, I was still surfing. I think I went for my last surf at about 18 maybe 18 or 20 weeks. It was a little bit uncomfortable, but I was actually fine to do it. So super active women could still be super active, but it is important that we are encouraging women to listen to their body. And depending on the woman that you're working with, there can really be that mentality of, I'm not willing to give up the things that I've been doing. I see that mentality a lot in people who love things like running or cycling, like road cycling, because they love that dopamine hit that they get from doing an exercise with intensity. People who love things like CrossFit might really struggle with listening to their own body. Eventually, if you go into something like CrossFit, then that place is going to tell you that you can no longer go there. They do have recommended guidelines for places, and women will be told, you know what, this isn't the place for you anymore. But that's up to the woman to take charge and really listen to her body. So as a professional, I think that it's up to us to start to have those conversations pretty early on. Some women will end up already gaining a little bit of weight around that first 12 weeks. Not a whole lot. You kind of just feel a little bit frumpy. You're not showing yet, but you certainly start to outgrow your clothing just a little bit. It's almost like you've got a really heavy period or something. You know, you've just got that bloating, or that you've just eaten something that you shouldn't have eaten. The body starts to swell a little bit. Now, as the uterus grows, because of increased blood volume, women in the first 12 weeks are probably going to be going to the bathroom a little bit more often than they are used to. So urination is a common part of this first trimester. So encouraging women, go to the bathroom before you start your class, come into your class, and then if you need to go to the bathroom afterwards, do that. But the thing is, because we've got this increased blood volume and this increased urination, so important that hydration is absolutely key. Actually, hydration helps with any type of swelling. So even though it seems like there's excess fluid, the body needs more water. So you want to keep drinking, or encouraging your women to be drinking plenty of fluids because of that excessive urination. Now, when it comes to estrogen and progesterone, as well as like the breast tenderness and that little bit of swelling, then you're probably going to recognize that women can be a little bit more emotional at this stage in their pregnancy. And that's okay. For some women, they didn't expect to get pregnant. Well, it's a big life shock. So they're coming to terms with the fact. For some women, they've been trying to get pregnant for goodness knows how long. So it's still a big emotional roller coaster. But hormones in general, that excessive hormones, so estrogen is the hormone of communication, of love, of connection, of community, is designed to, I believe at this stage, to keep the man and woman communicating, to keep them close together, to keep them fondling and really being solid. But too much estrogen can actually have the reverse effect, can cause women to feel sad and depressed. So it's okay if there's a few tears in class. It's actually pretty common in that first trimester for women to be a little bit sensitive. So for our language, it's super important that we are not saying things like, oh, gee, you're looking like you've put on weight. Ain't no woman wants to hear that, especially in the first trimester, because nobody even knows that she's pregnant, and she may not even know. And you don't look pregnant, you just start to look fat. So we don't need to be saying that. Let's get our foot out of our mouth as Pilates professionals and really use language of positivity. So start to have conversations around, are you relaxing whenever you can? Are you taking some time out? Are you listening to your body? Women in their first trimester, they're most of the time, if they're full-time workers, then they're still going to be full-time working, but they're bloody exhausted. So allow your sessions with them to be partly alleviating some of the stress that they might be feeling with coming to terms with pregnancy, but also just starting to listen to their body. Now, that first trimester, as far as if you haven't heard, there's I've got to look it up before I really talk about it. But the WHEN, which is like the pregnancy, it's like pregnancy guidelines that we have now got. I forget what WHEN stands for. I should have looked it up here. But the pregnancy guidelines state that in the first 20 weeks, you're pretty much fine to do whatever exercise feels okay. But we do want women to start to really listen to their body. And we're going to get to modifications afterwards. But in that first 20 weeks, then we're pretty good at doing whatever feels right for your body. I'm just quickly looking it up. I was talking to my instructors about this not long ago. Australian Pregnancy Care Guidelines. Now, if you are part of the Pilates Association of Australia in particular, then we do have guidelines that are available to us now. And, you know, I would like to think that we have all been working within those guidelines anyway. But maybe you were not aware of the guidelines, or maybe you're new to instructing and you've only just become part of your Pilates Association, whether you're in Australia or in America. But it is important that we are accessing things like this so that we are all offering very similar services. So when we're working with pregnancy, if you were to go onto, say, the PAA website in Australia, then you can actually go to resources and you can have a look at what the recommendations are for pregnancy. But it is important that you are asking some really relevant questions. So as soon as you know that a client is pregnant, it is important that you're starting to converse in a way that makes them recognize that you're a professional, but also helps them, I guess, start to ask their own questions. So even in the first trimester and throughout all of the trimesters, the 3 trimesters, definitely start asking, do you have any any pregnancy-related medical conditions or any pain or discomfort? Yes or no? And then you want to make sure that whoever their healthcare provider is, they've been A-okayed for exercise. So have you had clearance from your OB or from your GP or your midwife? Super important that we're having these types of conversations. But where was I? Back to what I was actually talking about. So yes, it's totally fine for you to exercise in that first trimester. That's right. I was talking about the WHEN. Now, the pregnancy guidelines do state that this is the time in pregnancy where we are talking about pelvic floor tone or pelvic floor strength. I think that it's important that even if you are having conversations about pelvic floor health, that you only have conversations as a practitioner, as a Pilates professional, that you really understand. Now, personally, it's taken me a long time to really understand about the pelvic floor and about the core muscles in general. So I'm going to discuss in this episode the kind of conversations I have with my clients, and hopefully it helps you have these similar conversations as well. For example, when I talk about pelvic floor, I do not assume that every woman needs to be elevating her pelvic floor in every exercise. What I do talk about is feeling how the bones of her pelvis move throughout the class. And as with all muscles, one of the great benefits of Pilates is that we are not only shortening muscles. So a concentric contraction is the shortening of muscle. So if you used your bicep and you pulled your fist towards your forearm or towards your shoulder, then your bicep is going to shorten. That's a concentric contraction. But from that 90-degree angle, if you started to extend your elbow, you could still feel your bicep working. The bicep is working eccentrically. It is exactly the same with the pelvic floor. That what we're trying to encourage is actually excellent dynamic pelvic floor tone. So that means the pelvic floor is able to shorten, but it's also able to lengthen. And it's able to shorten and lengthen under load, because let's be realistic, as you're growing a human being in your body, you are going to end up with about 3 kilos of extra weight inside your body. And some people even more, right? 3 to 5 kilos is the average full-term baby weight. And if you've got 2 of those bubbies, then there's even more weight in your body. But can you imagine, just imagine a bag of oranges, a 2-kilo bag of oranges, you're lifting at least that inside your body, and that's sitting directly up on top of the trampoline of your pelvic floor. So yes, we do want to understand the elevation or the shortening of the pelvic floor. We also want to understand the elongation, the lengthening, or the widening of the pelvic floor. Not the releasing. It's not about pelvic floor letting go, because the muscles are always working, but they're working in both directions. So while I do discuss pelvic floor tone and abdominal tone in general, I'm very careful of the language that I'm using. Some women are actually going to be very wound up in their pelvic floor already. And so those women are better suited to eccentric cueing, whereas some women are lax in their pelvic floor already, and they're going to benefit from concentric tone. If you're working in a class situation and you don't know whether that person is lax in the pelvic floor or wound up in the pelvic floor, it's important that you're using cueing for both people, and that you're really, what I'm doing is I'm encouraging the woman to feel what's happening in the base of her pelvis when she's doing certain things. So let's take footwork, for example, and you've got, or feet and straps is a good one as well. You've got your feet wide on the foot bar, and you push the carriage away. As you push the carriage away and extend the legs, you can feel, maybe you could feel the sits bones or the bones of the pelvis coming closer together. And then as you bend the knees and bring the carriage back in, maybe you can feel the sits bones widening. So these are the types of things that I'm getting women to do that I know are pregnant. And you know what? I'm actually doing it with all people, because eccentric, concentric, pelvic floor tone is important for everyone. What happens, and as we move into the second trimester, is that pregnant women can feel it more because they've got laxicity in their joints. Now, the laxicity in the joints actually does happen in the first trimester. Remember I said that estrogen was also one of the major players in that first trimester. So estrogen is very nourishing for the body. Estrogen is encouraging for the juiciness, the softness of the uterine lining. And then progesterone is helping carve out that uterine lining for the embryo to be able to sit as a little nest inside the female. So estrogen, while it does cause all of those hormonal or all of those emotional shifts, it contributes to what we call laxicity in the joints. So laxicity in the joints basically means that the ligaments start to become soft. And this is appropriate for a couple of reasons for a woman who's pregnant. Consider the changes of the body shape that happen throughout pregnancy. So maybe you start off like just your normal size, whatever that is, and then in 9 months, you'd balloon out so quickly. I cannot think of another reason that a woman would grow her torso so quickly, in such a short period of time. That has to happen for the baby to be able to fit in the body. And estrogen is what helps with that suppleness, with that elasticity. So that has to happen for a woman to be able to grow the baby. But that laxicity, and of course, as the body is growing, then the pelvis actually has to broaden a little bit to allow for baby to sit in the body as well. And at the same time, the body is preparing for the pelvis in particular to open up wider so that then the baby can fit through the birth canal and fit out through the pelvic bones. So if we think of the pelvis as three joints, there's the two ilium and then there's the sacrum. So of those three joints, there are 3 points where the ligaments have to soften to allow for those joints to widen so that a woman can give birth. This is going to happen regardless of whether or not a woman gives birth naturally or a vaginal birth, or whether she ends up having a cesarean. The hormone production is still there. Those joints are still going to become lax. And that actually starts in the first term. But I would say that a lot of that first term laxicity is actually to allow for the body to grow so rapidly. What we do need to consider when it comes to that laxicity is, so ligaments connect joints, connect bones, right? So you've got your sacroiliac ligaments and you've got your pubic symphysis ligament. So ligaments hold bones together. A softening of those ligaments are going to allow for the bones to move, which is appropriate as baby grows. Bones are moving, but also is very appropriate for the woman to be able to give birth. We've got to be very careful with that in exercise, and it's things that are going to pull those joints out of alignment when they don't need to be pulled out of alignment, that could cause havoc in a woman's body throughout pregnancy. Now, personally, I have never experienced this happening in the first trimester, but we do need to be aware that the laxicity is there. And so maybe a woman is not experiencing any pain in the first trimester, potentially things that we are doing in the first trimester could contribute either to the woman's pain or the woman's comfort in the trimesters to come. So things that I do want you to consider even in the first trimester is like wide lunges. So I would think of a wide lunge is like Russian splits on the reformer, and even some of the progressive scooters on the reformer as well. It's not that you can't do progressive scooters, but just be aware and get your client to start to be aware of the difference between feeling muscles work and feeling ligaments stretch. Once you've stretched ligaments, it's very, very difficult to come back from it. So you don't want to be one of the contributors to stretching ligaments. But normally women can feel, you can feel the difference between your muscles working and your ligament stretching. But we're going to move on to trimester 2 anyway with that in mind, right? So in trimester 2, what we're looking at is weeks 13 to 26, 27. There's many body on hormonal changes. Now, this is when we are really starting to consider modifying exercises for our clients. So we're going to start to see a visible baby bump. So exciting. So exciting for everybody, especially the mother, because she no longer feels just fat. She actually looks pregnant, and it feels good to look pregnant and not just fat. I can tell you from experience. For most women, they're starting to end up with more energy. So second trimester, I think, is a great way or a great time for women to really be upping the ante as far as their strength training. Ideally, they've been coming to Pilates with you already. There's nothing more frustrating than a woman starting Pilates at 32 weeks pregnant and wanting you to fix everything so that she can get her baby body back. It's not going to happen, but you can be a part of a very positive journey if you can work with women from the get-go. So if you love working with pregnant women, or if you are interested in it, then start promoting it as something that you enjoy doing. I promise you, most women, when they're pregnant, they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing for their body. They've given up booze, they're eating well, everything becomes about the baby. And in the second trimester, even women who have been doing things like running and CrossFit and road cycling, then they're probably looking at other alternatives. So you'll probably start to pick up a few women in the second trimester. As well as the visible baby bump and the improved energy, skin changes may be happening. So now the skin is really starting to have to stretch to accommodate the growing human in the body. So things like stretch marks and even that pregnancy glow. So the pregnancy glow is from increased blood flow, which helps with that changing of the body. But also, of course, there's still that estrogen coursing through the body as well. And that can really help with that beautiful glow. So the second trimester is known as the golden trimester. Most women start to feel really good. Their skin looks beautiful. Of course, some women have breakouts. Some women start to have that kind of that fluctuation, where they have like some patches on their skin. Some women have that from hormonal changes. But definitely, this is when we're going to start modifying things in the class. And maybe we start to see a few little niggles happening. Now, from about 20 weeks, this is when we need to start considering getting women off of their back. So in our sessions, in our class, we say in a reformer class, we prop women up on the jump board. Some studios I know will have like specific pregnancy cushions or pregnancy bolsters, but definitely propping women up can help make them feel more comfortable. We do want to consider the vena cava. So the vena cava is what feeds the baby from the placenta and keeps the baby alive. If the vena cava is squished for too long, then we can cause issues. Now, the regulations or the guidelines are saying from 20 weeks, you want to avoid supine work. So no more laying on the back. It's as simple as propping the woman up. I know that some women will say, oh no, I'm okay on my back. And you know what? In real life situations, that's fine. You go and do whatever you want to do. But when it comes to being a professional, it is important that we choose to work within these guidelines. Now, by about, say, 24 weeks, most women, their body is changing quite dramatically. Now, what happens is while estrogen and progesterone continue to rise to actually support the fetal growth and prevent preterm labor, other levels of the hormones start to plateau a little bit. The placenta is fully supporting the pregnancy, producing the hormones and facilitating that nutrient exchange. So no longer is the woman's adrenals and her brain creating all of these hormones. Now it is actually the placenta is forming all of these hormones. And it's almost like you've got a human inside your body, but then the human has its own little battery charge that is feeding off of your body, but also creating all of its own hormones and taking nutrients from your body to feed the baby. We're definitely seeing more increased blood volume. So blood volume by like the second trimester can rise by 30 to 50%. So this is increasing a cardiac output to supply oxygen to the fetus. So of course, more blood flow, more oxygen is being fed to that little baby. So what is super important is things like breathing exercises. Women who struggle to breathe well can get very fatigued very quickly because oxygen also feeds our body. So we're feeding two bodies oxygen. And at the same time, as the baby is growing, then organs are starting to get a little bit squished. So some women start to feel a little bit out of breath. In that second trimester, especially from about 20 weeks, well, we can elevate women to continue doing some elevated supine work. The things that we're starting to do is like 4-point kneeling. So any of your cat-cow exercises. You can also do 4-point kneeling cat-cow type exercises standing. So I love to put the long box onto the reformer. You can stand facing the foot bar but behind the foot bar, and then put the long box on the carriage and start to push the carriage away, bring the carriage in that cat-cow position. What I love about this, remember I said about the eccentric and concentric tone of the pelvic floor, when you're standing and doing cat-cow type of shapes, then you are encouraging that eccentric and concentric contraction of pelvic floor. We could start to really promote deep squatting exercises. If you're working with a woman and she's anticipating that she wants to give birth naturally, then these deep squatting exercises are actually preparing the birthing canal and preparing the pelvis for that really wide shift. And it's really getting women stronger in the legs. It is super important. So in second trimester, I'm doing things like squatting exercises, using your arms. You could squat against the wall. You could use a ball to help squat. You could straddle the reformer and squat, straddling the reformer, still doing some arms. You could be doing all of your cat-cow exercises standing. I'm also doing things like seated arms but straddling the long box instead of sitting on the reformer with your legs extended out in front of you. So things that is going to promote that widening of the pelvis, the squat position, and getting those legs to be working, which is why I love squatting exercises. For women who are tight in the pelvic floor, if you know that they're wound up in the pelvic floor, maybe they've gone to their women's health specialist, maybe they've had internal examinations in the past or even now, then you could be sitting those women either on a Pilates ball, and I'm not talking like not the smaller chi ball, but the slightly bigger Pilates ball, like a 30 centimeter ball, getting them to sit on that ball and really feel the bones of their pelvis and rolling around on the bottom of their pelvis feels really good. It starts to massage the perineum. It starts to encourage those pelvic floor muscles to lengthen, which is what we're really looking for. And it can also start to release the adductors as well, if they're a little bit tight in the inner thighs. Same with a big fit ball. You could sit your pregnant women on a fit ball and get them to do some pelvic tilts, some round the clock pelvic circles to really start to feel the bottom of the bones of the pelvic muscles or pelvic bones. Of course, relaxan is still being produced. So remember, the relaxan is loosening the ligaments and joints and actually preparing the pelvis for delivery. But it also does increase the injury risk. So after about 20 weeks, this is when I am very, very careful of things like scooter. Now, in particular, the question that I'm always asking my female clients who are pregnant is, say if they're going up and down stairs, have you felt any pelvic pain at all going up and down stairs, yes or no? Have you felt any pelvic pain at all when you're going for a walk? A lot of pregnant women are walking, or even when you're swimming. If the answer is yes, if they've felt any pelvic pain, for some women it's going to be in the joint in the front of the pelvis, the pubic symphysis. For some women it's going to be in the sacroiliac joints, but specifically if it's the joint and the pubic symphysis, then I am not doing any more scooter. What I do get them to do is stand with their feet just hip width apart, feet on the ground, and you can actually put your thumbs on top of the bones of the pubic symphysis. You can just kind of slide your thumbs over the top of that bone, and because there's a joint there, sometimes one bone is a little bit higher than the other. If that is the case, not quite often that's what the pain is. So that joint is a little bit out of alignment. You could send that client to a specialist women's health physiotherapist, or if that woman has got a preferred allied health practitioner who does some manual therapy, then they could potentially help to just get those joints back in line. You could do some self-massage techniques as well, but it is important that you're guided with somebody who knows what they're doing. But you can actually help realign those joints, and then quite often that can take away that discomfort. Now, if that pain continues at the front of the pelvis or even at the back of the pelvis, those two sacroiliac joints, some women by their third term are potentially going to end up with a belt that they wear, and the belt specifically is to keep those joints a little bit together. It's more common with women who have had multiple pregnancies, or women who are having multiple humans growing in their body at the same time, so twins or triplets, but not always. If somebody already has laxicity in the joints, then they could end up with that pelvic pain. And I also have seen it in athletes, and then I do wonder if the pelvis is super tight. So if you're very athletic and you've been a triathlete or a runner or a gymnast, and everything is all of those muscles are really wound up, and then things are starting to try and get pulled apart, I wonder if sometimes it's excessive tightness that could cause the slippage of that pubic bone. I don't know. It's just an idea that I have from working with people. But whatever. If it is uncomfortable when you're going up and down stairs, when you're walking, or even when you're swimming, then you're definitely not doing any lunge exercises. So no lunge exercises at all. So that includes scooter, that includes, of course, your Russian splits, which you're not up on the reformer anymore. You're not doing hard balance work from the second trimester anyway. Any of the balance work that you're doing is safely standing on the ground, because you definitely don't want to be the person who is responsible for a pregnant woman falling over in your class, let alone falling off of a reformer. For us in our studio, if women do have that pelvic pain, then we've also got a clinic. So our studio is set up that we do the reformer and mat classes as fitness classes, and we do one-on-ones and semi-privates in the clinic. So personally, we send women to the clinic if they have the pelvic pain, and the therapists, as Pilates professional therapists, we work with them, giving them specific exercises to help. But actually what needs to happen generally is glute med. So glute med is one of the stabilizers of the pelvis. Glute muscles in general need to be nice and strong, and ideally if you go into your pregnancy with your deep core muscles working well, then this is going to prevent women from having this pelvic pain. But once you've got it, it's very common to end up with it throughout the rest of your pregnancy. So now we're doing things as Pilates professionals to A, help alleviate the pain, but B, making sure that in our classes we are not we're not contributing to the pain. Things that can be helpful for women who have pelvic pain, thinking of glutes and thinking of core, is actually side lying exercises are fantastic. So from the second trimester onwards, in fact, I'm doing a lot of side lying exercises with my women, and a lot of 4-point kneeling exercises if it's appropriate for their knees and wrists. Side lying, I'm thinking, also because supine is not suitable anymore. I know that you can do the elevated supine, and that's great, but we're not there for very long, right? And if women have reflux, or if they have this pelvic pain, then definitely sideline feels better. So you could do all of your footwork side lying. What I mean by that is, you know how when you're laying on your back and you're doing heel on the bar, toes on the bar, external rotation on your heel, external rotation on your toes, you literally do all of those four positions, but you're laying on the side and you're probably just at half load because it's just single leg. When a woman is laying on her side and she's pregnant, if the belly is big, especially by the third trimester, then I use a little wedge underneath the belly on the side or even a rolled up towel because it's really uncomfortable if you're laying on the side and your belly is big and baby's kind of hanging. It's uncomfortable. So just prop up the belly so that there is support underneath, and all of the side lying stuff feels amazing. As far as other modifications, definitely I'm using pillows. Definitely I'm using stability balls. By now I'm avoiding any deep twists. So while lateral stuff feels wonderful in that second and third trimester, so things like mermaid feel wonderful, I'm not rotating. And so, for example, you could do, I do mermaid, and then I bring both hands down onto the bar and do like a few push outs because you're rotating pretty much from your pelvis. It's not a big rotation of the torso. Having said that, every person is very different, right? And I'm doing that in the second trimester, but by third trimester, women generally don't have the space anyway. But I'm not doing things like round the world or any of your deep twisting. So I'm not doing any of the rotational exercises against load. So you're certainly not doing any pulling straps rotation. And from the second trimester, you are definitely not doing any loaded abdominal. In fact, as soon as I know that a woman is pregnant, I am not doing any chest lift, definitely no hundreds. No loaded flexion from the upper body that would be shortening the rectus abdominal, so your six pack, because what needs to happen is all of that needs to elongate, right? So why would I be doing anything to shorten it when I know that in a very short period of time, those muscles have to stretch out? And in fact, what we see is women who have very tight rectus abs, so very tight six pack muscles, they're the ones that generally suffer from a widening of that linea alba. Now, this really comes in the third trimester, but the linea alba is the fascia that holds together or that connects the six-pack abdominals, right? So it's rectus abdominals. You've got the linea alba. Some women you can actually see that fascia or that tissue is like a line down the very front of the belly as they come into the third trimester. Not all women you can see it. But what has to happen for all pregnancy is that is going to split. Once it splits, that tissue is never going to knit back together. It's split forever, and that's absolutely fine. It's totally appropriate for pregnancy. But, and this is post-pregnancy, and even now during pregnancy, we don't want to be doing things that is going to increase the pressure of that gap that is now there, because you could cause a hernia. And you would know that this is herniating because, say, if the lady is laying on her back, and even if they're inclined, they're laying on their back, and they go to get up, and between where that linea alba is, so between the six-pack muscles, you can see a doming or a little pyramid. That's a herniation. And it's the underneath muscles that are pushing out. And you don't want that happening, because once that linea alba is split, then even though that is appropriate, part of its job when it was all together was back support. And so now that that's split, then if you think of the whole torso like a cylinder, the front of that cylinder has now been split open and compromised. If you keep pushing force out of that, then that's going to take a lot more pressure into the back. And it's super common for women in that late second and third trimester to have back pain. This is one of the reasons. I mean, obviously they're also carrying a heck of a lot more load, and their body has changed shape so much to allow for the space that is required to be holding baby as baby grows. But linea alba is compromised or stretched or split, we don't want to be adding on any load for that to be exacerbated. So from the get-go, I just don't do any chest lift at all. From the get-go, I do still teach some things like C-curve. So in the first trimester, sorry, I'm going backwards, I know, but there's so much to talk about. In the first trimester, I am doing things like half rollbacks, scooping the tummy into the body, and then rolling up specifically for transverse abs and obliques to be working. But by the second and third trimester, what I'm doing instead to get transverse abs and obliques working, obliques, I'm thinking more like mermaids because I want to open the side of the body out. I want to create as much space as possible for the growing baby. And also thinking post-pregnancy, if your obliques are nice and long, but not just stretched out, we're never just stretching muscle, we're lengthening muscle, or we're eccentrically contracting muscle. So we're getting those muscles in the obliques and even in the intercostals, so between the ribs, we're getting those muscles to expand. Remember, we were doing deep breathing exercises from the first and second trimester. Then that's going to allow for those muscles to be functioning in their full capacity. And what I mean by that is I always think of Pilates, when it's done well, it helps promote long, strong muscles. So not short, strong muscles. Long, strong muscles have appropriate flexibility, appropriate tone, appropriate strength, and they're allowing for the body to move well. So if we're thinking obliques, so all of our side overs, all of our mermaids, you could even do them standing, so side over standing stretches or side over standing work. Those muscles we're working long. That helps lift the torso up taller, so it creates a little bit of space for the baby, but also for all the organs that are starting to get squashed by the second and third term. But it's also encouraging that once the baby comes, then remember what we're really preparing the woman for is fantastic post-pregnancy recovery, and that requires good core tone. So we don't want to be working the rectus abs. So rectus abs is all about crunching, sit-ups, hundreds. We are working the side muscles because those side muscles actually wrap around the body anyway and come a little bit in a diagonal, and that's going to help pull the rectus abdominals back closer to each other, or allow for that movement to happen with the transverse abdominals. So deep transverse ab strength and good oblique tone is going to help with recovery. As far as transverse abs still working at this time, I'm doing a lot of 4-point kneeling cat-cows. If 4-point kneeling is appropriate for knees and wrists. If not, you do a lot of that stuff standing, still just pushing the box out, cat-cow, that type of stuff. Tail wags. I'm definitely doing things like clams, any mermaids on the floor, still using the football to encourage for that pelvic floor elongation. Okay, we're into the third trimester. So by the third trimester, goodness me, has the body changed or what? I mean, it is wild what has happened to the body by the third trimester. By the third trimester, women are growing like nothing else. And it's an amazing experience for both the woman, but also for us as Pilates professionals. You will see as a woman goes into her third trimester that the shape of her back has changed so much. So she's got this beautiful lordotic curve. So the lordotic curve is this real curve in the back to allow for the belly to just swing forwards. When we're looking at this, you do need to consider things like balance. So if the woman can no longer see her feet, she's got no idea where her feet are. It's something to consider. So avoid balance work by the third trimester. If anything, you could play around with still things like deep squats, so both feet on the floor. Women are still strong in the third trimester, and in fact, I often talk about with my women, if you're looking at a natural birth, you may be squatting for about 40 hours or so. So let's make sure your legs are strong. A pregnant woman should be a strong woman, absolutely. And part of our job is to empower women into this part of their term. Women are starting to feel vulnerable. Their body is changing. Maybe they've got reflux. All of their organs have been pushed out the way to give space for that growing human inside their body, and they are starting to potentially get a little bit scared about what's to come. But remember, the day of the delivery is just one single day. We want to empower women to feel strong and supported so that they can recover and really love their body post-pregnancy. So when it comes to that low back, more support maybe is what is required. Just be aware when women are sitting down that some, like say if they're sitting on the long box with their legs straddled, sometimes they'll just kind of fall into that lordotic posture, and it is appropriate to some extent, but not to the extent that it is hurting the back. I talk about a little bit of just imagine that you're hugging the baby a little bit. As you hug the baby, not bracing, but just hugging the baby with your inside belly muscles, it can give you a little bit more support. Things like, I imagine that you've got a hula hoop and you're using the hula hoop, so you're doing circles with your hips while you're standing. You can do big circles. You could still be doing things like your cat-cow. If you've been working with the woman for a long time, you could be doing some gentle elephants on the reformer. If she's okay kneeling, you could be definitely doing some kneeling kind of elephants with the hands on the foot bar. You're very, very careful at this stage about balance challenges. I'm definitely not doing things like kneeling arms. It is not appropriate for women at this stage because their whole balance is off. It's super important. Still a lot of glute work, so still side lying. Sometimes we're doing things like, because by now you've been doing a lot of side lying with the foot on the bar, you can also be doing side lying with the foot in the strap. So you could do all of your hip work side lying. You can also be doing arm work side lying. So instead of doing your supine arms with your hands in the strap and legs in tabletop, I get women to lay on their side, and they've got a single arm in strap. So they could do what is normally their lat pull, but it would be to the ceiling down to the side of their body. What is normally their tricep press, forwards and back, and even circles. When women are laying on their side by the third trimester, you're definitely offering them a pillow to pop underneath the side of the belly and a pillow between the knees as well. So anything that could have been happening in the second trimester is more likely to happen now as far as discomfort is concerned. So I'm always asking women, how are the bones of your pelvis feeling? Are you getting any discomfort when you're going up and down the stairs, when you're walking, when you're swimming, all of that sort of stuff? So if they are getting any discomfort, then you definitely want to help them alleviate that discomfort. So remember, some women by now are using the belly belt, and that is really, really common, especially if they are if they've put on a heck of a lot of weight or if they've got that pelvic pain. But ultimately, we want to make sure, sorry, somebody's just arrived here. Ultimately, we want to make sure that women feel supported in everything that they're doing with us. We are preparing women for the birthing process. So things like relaxation, visualization of allowing for the pelvis to open really wide. So if you are still doing the incline footwork on, say, on the reformer, then you're really feeling that the bones of the pelvis are getting pulled super wide. You're allowing for that to happen. It's almost like the pelvic floor is opening like a flower. I often use the wall for that concept. And so say women are standing with their back against the wall, and then they can squat really deep with their bottom up against the wall, and then just really allowing for the feeling of the bones of the pelvis and even for that release of the pelvic floor as they're leaning up against the wall. What else am I doing in... Things like plantar fasciitis may start to happen even in the second trimester if the woman is putting on weight quite early. Plantar fasciitis is super common because there's so much load through the body, and also the changes of the feet. So sometimes women end up a little bit pronated, or you could say that their arch of their foot starts to flatten a little bit. Partly that's going to be from load, partly that's from a lot of estrogen, but also the laxicity of the joints, so the relaxan. Relaxan is really preparing the body for the birthing process right now. So she's got relaxan coursing through her body, as well as that of the relaxan to help with the joints. It's going to be separating all the joints in the feet. It's going to be relaxing the joints through the knees, the hips, and the ankles. So this is when you're potentially going to start to hear women say, I've got sore ankles, sore knees, sore hips, or even sore feet with the plantar fasciitis. I always encourage women in our studio to be doing things like Epsom baths for your feet is really good, just to alleviate that pressure. But put your feet up whenever you can. So at home, if you can put your feet up a little bit, that's great, unless baby is breech. If baby is breech, then you really don't want to be laying on the couch on your back. That's just going to make baby kind of sit on your spine. If baby is breech in studio, then we are doing a lot more 4-point kneeling stuff than laying on the back. If you're laying on the back, then that just doesn't encourage baby to turn around. And it's not necessarily our profession anyway to be facilitating the breech, but we do know that 4-point kneeling is better, and that standing is much better than laying on the back. So if baby is breech, then I eliminate things like even the incline of the footwork, and I'm doing either side lying, 4-point kneeling, or standing. But let's go back to plantar fasciitis. Sorry, I get a little bit off track. Plantar fasciitis, so Epsom salt baths, foot massage from your beautiful husband or partner. You can also be wearing some house shoes all the time. So I say to my women, go and get like a really comfortable pair of fluffy slippers that you can wear around the house. So you're always wearing something just for a little bit of support. You can wear those fluffy slippers into the studio, and then when we're working, you can take your slippers off, and we're doing things like heel raises and calf raises just to keep that arch working a little bit with some support. And also you could pop like a water bottle in the freezer, let it freeze, and then just roll your foot on the water bottle. It can be a little bit alleviating. They're probably the main things. Of course, neck and shoulders start to get a little bit sore by that third trimester, if not earlier, as your boobs start to grow and prepare for feeding. So when we're doing seated work, I'm thinking of really helping women connect through the lower traps and the rhomboids and not let the neck and shoulders take over. So we do need to be aware of that when we're doing things like 4-point kneeling. If they feel work in their shoulders, just make sure that we are cueing for the shoulders to be a little bit relaxed. Now, the beautiful thing is when it comes to Pilates and encouraging women to come back to Pilates is that most of the things that we're doing in the third trimester, so think side lying, standing, you can do cross-legged if they're comfortable cross-legged, as in like the genie kind of cross-legged, like you're an 8-year-old sitting at assembly at school, quadruped, squatting, and even your Z-sit position. All of those positions are the types of shapes that we're going to be doing with women post-pregnancy for the first 3 months. So this is the beauty of what it is that we're teaching women in the session. And ideally, we're giving women, before they leave us, some homework to do. So as soon as baby arrives, whether or not you've had a Caesar or whether or not the woman has given birth naturally, doing things like deep breathing. So you've already taught deep breathing from the first trimester, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, doing things like just gentle core activation. So remember that cue of hugging the baby. The hugging the baby cue, you're doing that feeling as soon as baby has come. like the next few days. So you're starting to get those core muscles to draw back in just gently. You're not lifting your legs or anything. You're just using your breathing and that feeling of hugging the belly. And then when you are ready to get up, 4-point kneeling, cat-cow. You've been doing cat-cow since the second trimester. It's one of the very first things that we start doing. Because it helps, you're working those tummy muscles against gravity. So there's that sense of pulling the tummy muscles into the body. So you're already starting to draw the rib cage together. You're starting to pull the six-pack muscles back together. You're starting to draw the transverse abdominals together or a little bit tighter. But you're also starting to mobilize the pelvis in a way that's going to help the pelvic floor muscles heal if you did give natural birth. So all of these beautiful tools that we've given women throughout their pregnancy, pretty much from about 20 weeks, we do a lot of the same things. This is a long-term plan, and it really is about empowering women to listen to their body, to nourish their body through movement, and to learn to love their body so that they can then hand on that love to the human being that they grew inside of their body. That's all I've got for you today, guys. That was a long one. I thought, oh yeah, pregnancy, that's going to be quite short. But oh my gosh, you could talk forever about pregnancy, right? Pregnancy is not a disorder. It's not a disease. It's not something that we need to be scared of. Pregnancy is a natural part of our development. It's a natural thing that we do throughout our lives. Pregnancy is something that should be celebrated, something that should be honoured, and something that I believe that we should all be working with joy. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's Katie Crane. I am the Pilates professional, and of course, this is the Pilates Lounge podcast. You'll be hearing from me very shortly. Have a great day. Take care.